I can do a quick roll call. I'll start with you, George.
Here.
We got David.
Smiling.
David. We got Tyler. Municipal, what are you?
Municipal Services.
I see why Linda has no problem doing this.
2 hours in, Tyler. It's not
No
just
problem
me.
there, Linda.
On the side, and also on the
We got Jeff, our CAO. We had Taylor Robinson, Executive Assistant. Angela Thurber, our counselor. I'm Matthew Ross, Deputy Warden, taking the place for our Warden Linda Gregory.
Hello,
she is
Linda.
In Newfoundland doing recreation work for us. So I will pause to seek guidance. And now we will move into administrative and procedural items. Do I have any addition or deletions of the agenda?
No, I move acceptance of the agenda as presented.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Next is approval of the minutes. Has everybody gone through the minutes of May 9th?
I move approval of the minutes for May 9th, 2023.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Next, we have a presentation from Maria. I'm going to try your last name, Rasopa.
Close.
Was it close? All right. From Mersey Tobiatic Research Institute.
You guys remind me of the biosphere. You guys know what I'm talking about when I say that?
Yeah, we do work with the southwest of the biosphere as well.
I saw the area is almost identical, so.
It is, yeah.
I gotta get a motion for the.
Oh, I move, so moved.
Seconder?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. The floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for the opportunity to talk about our organization and share some of our work today. And I'll just do a quick check if everyone on Zoom can hear me.
Can you hear her, Linda?
I can hear.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to be discussing municipal species at risk stewardship, and I'm Maria Rasiopa, and I'm a communications and outreach coordinator with the Mersey Tobiatic Research Institute. So the scope of today's presentation includes a brief introduction to our organization, MTRI, and the Gascoigne Conservation Collaborative, or the KCC. I will then present some broad results from our municipal environmental stewardship survey, and I'll talk a bit about the results specific to this municipality, and then I'll be discussing the species at risk toolkit that we're working on for municipalities, and then we will have a 10-minute period for questions and answers. So at MTRI, we are a science-based research group focused on protecting and conserving biodiversity. We have projects dedicated to the research and conservation of species, including landing turtles, eastern ribbon snakes, bats, lichens, monarch butterflies, and Atlantic coastal plain flora, or ACPF. Our mission and vision are up there, which you guys can read on your own. And there's a lot of ways to get involved in our organizations. We can be found handing out species at risk guides at farmers markets. We host a virtual seminar on the last Thursday of every month, which is in the evening as well, so it doesn't conflict with work time. And currently we have a free kids program that's happening every other Saturdays, and you can always stop by our cabin or a research facility at Mount Merritt Road to meet our staff and pick up a species at risk guide. And we've recently undergone a lot of growth. So we used to be an organization with about, we started with 1 employee at our conception, and right now we have almost 20 employees.
Wow.
Including our summer students, and I have one with me. This is Jordan, and so we've grown a lot recently and come into a nice $1 million funding agreement with the federal government to work on this priority place engagement and species at risk conservation. And we're working with the Gascoigne Conservation Collaborative, or the KCC, and this is a group of 18 partner organizations, and it includes Mi'kmaq organizations, NGOs like MTRI, academic institutions are involved, and then also the respective federal and provincial environment departments are involved in the KCC as well. The KCC was established in October 2017, and the mission of the collaborative is to conserve species at risk and biodiversity in the Gesbowick, Southwest Nova Scotia Priority Place, which is highlighted up there on the map, so it's pretty much all of Southwest Nova Scotia is part of this Priority Place, and I'll explain a bit more in future slides what the Priority Place initiative is all about. So we distributed a survey in earlier this year to get at this question, which is how can we support municipalities in species at risk stewardship? And to this end, we asked about environmental concerns and what the greatest priorities are for municipalities, what barriers municipalities face when it comes to environmental stewardship, and we really wanted to identify opportunities to link various municipalities with the environmental groups that are local to them that can help with their environmental initiatives and provide some support and expertise. So we closed this survey in March of this year, and we had 56 responses, which is 92% of the municipalities in Gesbowick, which was 22 of the 24 municipalities. And keep in mind, as I go through the results, that we had a varying response, and over 50% of the participants were council members. So here are some of the key results. We had a graphic facilitator create these visualizations of responses to certain short answer questions, and it really helped capture the different themes that came up when our respondents answered the questions. So we found that when talking about what makes their municipality unique, municipalities talked quite a bit about Gesbowick as a part of their answer to the question, and they really touched on this sense of place and cultural identity that's tied to the land, and that was recognized as being important to the well-being of municipal residents. It was interesting that that came up in this answer because the municipalities also were quite unaware of the Priority Place initiative, with only 23% of the survey respondents being familiar with it. So to give some context, there are currently 11 priority places across Canada, and Gesbowick, or Southwest Nova Scotia, is one of them, and it's also, as you were mentioning, a UNESCO biodiversity hotspot. So priority places are chosen because they have exceptionally high levels of biodiversity and concentrations of species at risk. And Gesbowick is home to 94% of the terrestrial species at risk in all of Nova Scotia. And the federal government is really focusing their conservation efforts on these 11 priority places, and they've already invested over $3 billion across the 11 priority places in Canada. Okay, so I'm actually still on that slide. So municipalities were generally unaware of the priority place, but they were very informed when it came to species at risk in their municipalities, invasive species, and they were very good at naming different ecosystems in their municipalities. But ecosystem services was a bit, there was a bit less knowledge around ecosystem services, but again, it was kind of a term, the term was unfamiliar for our respondents, but then they implicitly used it a lot when answering what makes their municipality unique, because they talked about different tourism and recreation opportunities that the ecosystems provide, and they talked about the provisioning and support of resource-based industries, which is also an ecosystem service, and again, this sense of place and identity that's tied to place is also a ecosystem service known as a cultural ecosystem service. So that was very interesting because there was only, or it was 54% of the respondents, so over half of them, were unfamiliar with the term. And then it was further evidenced by another question where municipalities generally did not consider the loss of ecosystem services to be a high concern for the municipality. But at the same time, over 59% of the respondents felt that species at risk are very important to healthy ecosystems. So it showed that there's clearly, municipalities can recognize that there's a link between biodiversity and ecosystem functioning, but may need some more help to kind of take it a step further and take the link from biodiversity to ecosystem functioning to the actual concerns that municipalities have, such as water quality and erosion and controlling pests and regulating temperature. These are all things that come from having a healthy ecosystem. And in terms of the other bits, just some quick stats, 64% of our respondents could name at least one species at risk, and 80% could name at least one invasive species. So it was a bit stronger in their knowledge there. question, what is the main environmental concern for your municipality? We had an overwhelming response that climate change was the primary environmental concern for both municipalities and municipal residents. 21 of the 22 surveyed municipalities mentioned climate change as an environmental concern, and most of them also mentioned another related issues such as the increase of extreme weather events, sea level rise, and erosion. And to the next slide, please. Moving on to the barriers or the challenges that municipalities are facing, the forefront issues were a lack of funding, multi-level government support, a lack of capacity, and also a lack of political will. And then we also found there was a lack of engagement with NGOs, which could be posed more as an opportunity to engage more with NGOs, and this was evidenced by less than half, or 45% of the participants being able to name an NGO that's currently working to conserve species at risk. And finally, we asked our respondents to discuss what tools and resources they're already using for conservation in their municipality and what tools and resources they would like to have in their municipality. And then this question was really helpful to lead into the development of the Species at Risk toolkit that we're working on, and we gained a lot of different ideas on what to implement in the toolkit from this question. We found that policies and planning were major tools that municipalities are currently engaging with, and when asked how likely the municipality was to implement policy shifts or develop new planning strategies, we found that municipalities were overall more receptive to the idea of implementing policy shifts rather than developing planning strategies. And in terms of tools and resources that municipalities want, the response included things like access to experts that can help with education and outreach. More information on species at risk was a big gap that was identified through this question in terms of both maps of habitat and ranges, but also guidelines for action when the species at risk is found. And a less tangible tool that municipalities responded that they want is to be able to engage more with each other, with other levels of government and with NGOs, but in some cases need help building these relationships and repairing, in some cases as well, trust that has been lost between these different groups. And now for this municipality, respondents that filled out the survey for MODD noted some special features of the area, which included the coastline, the investment into green energy sources, and particularly wind turbines, and the extensive trail network were all important aspects of this municipality. The respondents from the municipality of the district of Digby were highly knowledgeable about the local environment and reported the greatest variety of different species at risk, which was 16.
Good old Terry.
And that was compared to, there was an average of 4.5 species were listed by each municipality. So it's quite a bit more. And they also named the most ecosystem services, identifying 12 different ecosystem services. But they were unaware of any policies or planning strategies that are enacted in this municipality that relate to environmental stewardship. There are, of course, some policies specific to the protection of species at risk, or at least to the protection of the environment. And a big example would be that the Digby Wellfield Source Water Protection Plan is affording some level of protection to the watershed of Van Tassel Lake. So the results from this survey are being used to develop a municipal species at risk stewardship toolkit, and the website that's at the very top of the slide is where the toolkit will be hosted, and we are aiming to have these discussions with municipalities to continue to get at the needs and challenges relevant to each municipality in Guestwick, and that'll help us form this toolkit, help with outreach, and connect municipalities to various organizations that are providing support. If you go to this link right now, we've developed a ecosystem services infographic, and this is a little interactive, so you can move your mouse over the different services that are in the boxes there, and then if you go to the next slide, it'll take you to a little blurb about each service and the type of ecosystems that provide this service, and then if you just scroll down a little bit, it'll also have some links to related projects or funds that could help you uphold that ecosystem service. And then some of the parts that will go into the toolkit is we want to have some spatial tools, so a map including some species at risk information, alongside it some municipal success stories specific to conservation and some special places that the survey respondents mentioned. We're also developing an interactive decision tree so that users and municipalities can choose a specific species at risk or a taxon, so a more broad group of species at risk, and then go into a category to find recommended actions. So these are recovery strategies that the federal government has already outlined, and then it's just putting them in a decision tree so it's more accessible to various users and to municipalities, or if a resident were to come to the municipality and say that they found a Canada warbler nest on their property, then you can say go through this decision tree, select birds, select whatever kind of maybe outreach or management or whatever category it is of recovery you're trying to do, and then you can find some scientific and evidenced actions that can be taken for that species at risk. And we're also looking at consolidating conservation and municipal planning tools and finding case studies and examples of bylaws and policies that are being enacted in Gaspowick that are helping conserve species at risk specifically. And this section will also have some examples of outreach materials that municipalities could use specific to species at risk. And then we'll also have some interactive tables to help municipalities find the various funding opportunities that NGOs and the government are offering, and organizations that can help municipalities with their specific needs. I think a big one would be if a municipality knows they want to do some flood risk masking or mapping, then we would link you to a municipality or a NGO that has experience doing that already, or an NGO that has experience planning, could help any municipalities that are trying to update their land use planning bylaws. And then finally, we'll have a section for community action reports and guides, and that's kind of the catch-all section for resources that are related to environmental stewardship but not specific to species at risk. So things that would go in there would be like a native plant list, dark sky preserve best practices, water quality resources, and more. So in closing, please contemplate this question: how can your municipality be supported in environmental stewardship? And feel free to reach out to me via email with any questions, suggestions, opportunities to work together on a stewardship initiative. And thank you all for listening, and I'll now open the floor for any questions.
David?
Reminds me a little bit of the bog project on Westport. Do you have any idea about that? The Eastern Mountain Avens and
Yes,
the reclamation of the bog?
We are involved in that project, or that project is part of this project to some degree. It is a municipal project, and we've helped fund it a little bit.
Oh, they could use them, yeah, because they've used up most of their funding for before, yeah.
Yeah, at this point they've made a stewardship plan, but yeah, we're working on how to move forward from that part.
Yeah, it'd be nice to continue the science, all the science that's being done there. A lot came out of that trail. A real nice walking trail, sort of got the community back into interest of it. There was even, some potentially dicey moments, like people were like, oh, you got that super rare flowers growing on your four-wheeler trail. And dude's like, oh, I guess I don't have a four-wheel trail. He just roped it off. It wasn't the end of the world. He says he gave it the rarest plant in Canada on it. I guess I can't drive my four-wheeler over it. It's like, but, people, it was good. So what kind of, you got 19 workers, have you got any concrete results behind you? Like, we did this, we did that, can you give me an example of something like that?
That's a good question. I would say most of our work is more in monitoring and not so much intervention-based. We're currently monitoring turtle nesting, we're tracking snakes, but we're not really implementing that many different, experimental things. In that area where the Eastern Mountain Avens are, we've also been...
Bird banding station.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been going on for like 70 years.
Eagle nests, especially, and they're...
Hey, you count them recently?
Yes.
How many?
I'm not sure. I didn't count.
Because we're under the impression there's a lot less.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Yeah. I haven't heard that, but our senior wildlife biologist is out there counting them. And
we find them on the island. We ran into him once when we were harvesting seagull eggs, and they told us that that was wrong. We shouldn't have the seagull eggs. They stopped us. They're like, what are you doing? I was like, we're eating sea lions.
Yeah, I wouldn't say seagulls they're not protected.
No, you're not allowed to molest their nests. No.
Yeah.
We were.
It is like the largest seagull colony, maybe in Canada.
I think it might be the Atlantic seaboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they are negatively impacting the eastern mountain maiden. So,
Yeah.
but it's hard to know when you can intervene.
I think the bird flu is intervening for us right now.
That was true, yeah.
That's interesting. Just a lot of good came out of. There was economic. They rented a local hostel, and it was full of scientists for a few years. There was all kinds of community meetings. People got excited about it, interested in it, and half the island is a nature conservancy.
Right.
As it is, and the municipality got involved as well. I can never pronounce the word. Extradite? No.
Expropriate.
There we go. I heard it earlier today. Yeah, a little spot there. So yeah, and it also helped with flooding on the island, and there's a dropping water table, and so closing off the bog will hopefully impact upon that. So yeah, so many positives came out of it. You guys should take a close look and see what they've done there, because so many things came out of that. It might be a good, there's something practical and demonstrable. Yeah, that worked
Yeah,
out
we
good.
did want those success stories to get into the toolkit as well, so that other municipalities can read it and think, what can I implement that's similar in my area?
Right, that's all. Just reminded me so much of what we're doing.
Any other questions? Linda? No? Well, thank you very much. Good presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, walking through with the eggs. They said they didn't mind.
You could have egged them, eh?
What's that?
You could have egged them.
No! Eat those. Nobody eats them now, though.
I'll move on to
Sick cat
2.4,
dolls.
unfinished business for minutes of May 9th, 2023. There's no unfinished business.
In the previous minutes, it mentioned about that we had discussed realtors not letting the buyers know about access to their land and stuff. And it mentioned that we would discuss it more in the next committee of the whole meeting, but I see it's not on our agenda anywhere. Did it get overlooked?
It was discussed during the bylaw and policy council meeting last week.
Oh,
We had decided to write a letter to Jill Ulcer, so that will come before the council in the month.
thank you.
Other business? Hearing none, we'll move into the CAO reports. There's no meeting next week, June 20th. We have council on June 27th, 5 p.m. July 4th is bylaw and policy at 5. No meeting on July 11th. There'll be a audit committee meeting on July 18th, 5 p.m. and July 25th at 5. We will have our council meeting. Anybody not going to be there? It's vacation summertime. Everybody's going to be on the beach.
June, July.
14th.
I might not be here on the 18th. There's a chance.
James, you won't be here on the 18th. Okay.
I feel like 15, 16, 17. Oh, no, that might be good.
I'm not sure.
Maybe if you could just check your schedule,
Yeah.
we can talk about it again at council at the end of the month. But,
Okay.
We talked about the June 48th.
The June 27th? Yeah.
June 48th.
Oh, jeez, didn't see that. June 48th. Good day.
Look,
All right. Was there any questions on any of the CAO reports, department reports? Did anybody have?
Yeah, can we have a policy where you're not allowed to bring your own fuel truck onto the airport? It's our fuel or use someone else's airport. Is that possible?
I would suggest it would be entirely possible, except for cases of emergency, which this would have clearly fallen
Yeah.
under.
No, once we're out of oil and gas or jet fuel or whatever, then we can.
But yeah, that's.
I'm not sure a policy that profits off an emergency situation.
The best idea.
Get out of the way, let them and let them
I just had my heart. I just hope maybe a few $1,000s. So,
And then they could use the facilities, didn't have to spend all their money going back to Fredericton, then they wouldn't have been able to make as many trips.
back and forth to Fredericton, Yarmouth's a little closer to Fredericton.
And that was a question I heard, why didn't they use Yarmouth? But Digby's airport is
I
better,
think
so.
there were other planes, so we had a certain collection of the smaller planes that came to Digby. Some of the other bigger ones were fueled, and there was too many planes and aircraft for one airport to make
Interesting.
Yeah. Right on.
Well, everything's gonna burn down, maybe we need an airport then.
All right, if there isn't any other questions, then can I get a motion for the reports?
I move that we
So
accept,
moved.
seconded.
Second it, all in favor?
Mike,
Contrary-minded, motion carried. There's no dangerous and unsightly, so we'll move into business items 4.1, draft number 2, capital budget.
There's nothing shocked me, I don't think it was exactly the same as the last one, wasn't it?
So the only changes that we were asked to make are the only changes that we did make.
Sounds good.
So we moved Haynes Lake, we had discussed moving that from year 4 into year 3, so we did that. And we added Weymouth North into year 5 at 1.6 million. So again, those year 5 projects aren't commitments that we're doing them. It's just a placeholder for some of these larger value items that we will kind of discuss each year with where they should live. So that's how we talked about managing year 5. So Weymouth had been in the capital plan a number of years ago. It didn't come out, so we just put it back in at year 5. So those were the only changes that were asked. If there's any other questions, I certainly will entertain those at this point.
Looking good to me, I'm looking here, that's fine. Jet fuel.
If you are okay with it, and this is no rush, if we could entertain a motion to recommend
So
to
moved.
council.
Do I have a seconder? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded, motion carried.
Is that it?
There is no correspondence tonight. There is no in camera. At this time, we do have a guest here tonight. Do you have any
Oh,
questions?
our
on
guest.
Just what?
I'm hiding behind you, sorry.
She's here.
Oh, I'm
Yep.
just here out of interest at this point, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Then can I get a motion for adjournment? Seconder?
seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded, motion carried.